Hey guys, you're watching Concept, and in this video we're gonna talk about UFunctions. UFunctions, you've probably seen it if you have been working with C++, and it's a macro specific for Unreal Engine, just as U property, and here it has its own purpose to expand our functions, so we can have those functions when we create blueprint from C++ class. Okay, first I'm gonna explain what is the difference between blueprint pure and blueprint callable. So when we go to our C++ class and we create blueprint class from it, the first function, which is blueprint pure, is function 1. Function 1, and the second one is blueprint callable, function 2. So what is the difference between pure and callable? Pure doesn't have execute node. As you can see, these are execute nodes. It doesn't have it, and it is mostly used for mathematical operations. This will actually be same as, for example, float plus float addition. So you have one float and other float, and you will have output of addition of those two. So this blueprint pure is for mathematical operations, and I define it the same as for this addition. So as you can see, it's A plus B. So we have these are inputs, float A, float B, and that will be these two, and this is return type, which is actually output, so it is a float, as you can see. You can always put other things. You don't have to have float, you can also have other variables. As for blueprint callable, you have it's the same. I mean, I defined it the same to have two inputs and one output. So as you can see, you have two inputs, A and B, and outputs, and it is used for some more complex functions which will need to be executed. For example, at begin play, execute these functions. So that's the main difference between pure and callable. Now let's talk about inputs and outputs. As you can see, in C++ you can have only one output. You can only have one return type, and that is what you define here, so before name of the function. And as you can see, we have that returned value. And you can define multiple, you can say like int32c, multiple inputs. So you can have a dozen of inputs, and as you can see, we have two inputs. But what will happen if we want to have more outputs? Like when we do in blueprints, we can define more outputs. In that case, you will need to put this sign. As you can see in function 3, we have between float and between name of our value, we have this and sign. This sign is actually passed by reference. It is called passing by reference, and Blueprint will recognize it as output parameter. So if we go to function 3, as you can see, we have 3 output parameters. So we have this return type, this passed by reference, and this one passed by reference. So just to tell you, technically this is called passed by value, and this is called passed by reference when you have this sign. So let's talk about combination of those two. If we go to our function 4, which I made, you will see that I have 2 inputs and 3 outputs. And if we look in our C++, this first one is return type. This is the first output. So as you can see, return value, that is the first one. The next one is int32 passed by reference. So as you can see, this sign, and the next one is float passed by reference. So you will have this as output, this one as output, and this one as output. And if we go to our blueprint, you can see those 3. And as for you can see that these one are passed by value. They don't have this and sign, and those are inputs. And you can see bool and int32. Bool and int32. That is a combination of those two. Yeah, that's pretty much it for Blueprint Pure and Blueprint Callable. Now let's get to UFUNCTION events. Now, if you have, for example, some custom event which prints string, and you want to run this event to be executed in C++, for example, on begin play. How can you do that? You cannot do that because you made that custom event in Blueprint. That is where actually our Blueprint implementable event comes. So Blueprint implementable event, for example, if I copy this and paste it to our begin play, for example, it should run, this event should run on begin play, and I just compile my, first to delete these, okay, and I compile my C++. Compile is complete. Now if we go to our Blueprint implementable event, it is called implementable event. So if we go to our graph and find it, okay, this event will print string. It can always do some more complex things, but this is just an example. So this event is called from C++ to run on begin play, as you can see. So if we go here and put an instance, you will see hello. So yeah, that's the main reason why we use implementable events, so we can run Blueprint events from our C++ code. Okay, but one thing I should mention, for example, all these functions, function 1, 2, 3, 4, all those functions have their defined functions in CPP. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4. But for this implementable event, we have nothing. It is an empty, and it should stay that way. You should only have implementable events in your .h file. You should not define it in CPP. If you define it in CPP, you will get an error. So it should only stay this way. What happens if we want to define our function in CPP and we want that to be overridden in Blueprint? In this case, we use Blueprint native events. So Blueprint native event, we define its own purpose in a CPP file. So let's say all our characters yell on English, but we can make this as native event. So we have one character which yells in Chinese, and its functionality will be overridden in Blueprint graph. So one important thing is to say that Blueprint native events are defined by name. You can say any name. It can be yell. I just use native event as a name. And when we define it in CPP, they must have their name underscore implementation. So let's say that our function is called death, for example. In that case, here it will be death, but in CPP it should be death underscore implementation. I will return back to my native event. Okay, so I said that in begin play it will run that native event. It will run. So as we can see, it will display hello from C++. Let's try it out. Okay, I will put it here, and when I play, hello from C++. It's all working good. Function is working. So what is a native event? What is its purpose? So for example, I say print string, and we will say hello from Blueprint. And when we compile and run, you will see hello from Blueprint. So point of this is to override our C++ function. If we don't create that event, it will not be, it will run as it's in CPP, as you can see hello from C++. But if we call that create that native event, it will override it with whatever we put in Blueprint. Yeah, that's pretty much it for UFunctions. There are more things to talk about, but probably we'll do that in the future. And also check out blog posts by Tom Lumen. I find them very informative, and also I'll post some links below. Please subscribe if you like this video, and also I'm planning making some C++ tutorial for beginners from perspective of someone who worked in Blueprints.